entrepreneur and owner of any organization, like, because you're at the top, you might have a partner, but it's lonely and nobody's going to pat you on the back and say, it's tough times, good job. To look in the past and see how far you've come and the obstacles you've gone around and removed gets our confidence back. And when a owner is confident, the organization is confident. When the owner is stressed, the organization is stressed.
Welcome to the McGuire Enterprise Podcast. You've got James here. We've got a really special guest, Matt Foss. And Matt, just if I butcher some of this, just yell at me.
It's all
no
good.
Problem. But Matt, he's a father of three, Gabby, Millie, and Maddox, I believe. Married to an amazing wife, Janelle, who puts up with a lot of his BS, which if you're a business owner and you're married, your wife's dealing with a lot.
Janelle's going to love this podcast already.
Matt, hopefully we get her to listen. But Matt's a former owner of two different companies, CEO of a PE-backed business as well, D1 football captain. If you can't tell by just looking at him here on the screen, loves fitness. But he understands what it takes to build an exceptional business, the emotional toll, the physical toll, the late nights, the early mornings. He's been through the highs. He's been through the lows. He's, failed a ton, just like most of us, made plenty of painful mistakes. And we've all justified keeping those employees that maybe we kept too long, right? Just to get past Q4, just to get past Q3. Yep. And some of that, from what you were telling me, is because of an unclear vision. And so now your mission is really showing people that there's a better way to get traction, to get a vision, and to get a clear picture. And so now Matt's doing a lot of consulting, and we'll dive into that deeply, but you're really helping a lot of people have those tough conversations with grace, which I think is so important. Having skill, because it takes skill to talk to people in the right way about complicated personnel problems and things like that. But what I'm hoping that we'll get from Matt today, and we're just going to dive into a bunch of questions, is he's going to help us hopefully understand what it takes to accomplish, to do great things, right? To get into that, that danger zone, if you will, to have some big gains down the road. Hopefully that was a decent intro for you. Yeah. What did I miss, Matt? Anything else there we should share with those listening?
No, that's great, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive in. I always love to talk to business owners really about their start. So like just briefly, maybe 5-10 minutes, walk us through like, who was Matt? You obviously went to D1 school, played D1 football. That's tough. So like, talk to us about high school. What was your first job, and what like started you kind of down that entrepreneurial path, maybe after college, or maybe it was before?
Yeah. So I grew up in Indiana, Northeast Indiana, Fort Wayne. And my first job was I worked on an asphalt paving crew during the summer. And if you don't know, like it stinks, it's hot, you're up at 3:00 in the morning and you're on a road, right? So that was my first job, which was very interesting. I wouldn't say I hate it. I got paid really good money. And what I realized really fast at a young age, and my dad owned a business, but the world looks at people like that do construction, dig holes, like, and service people in general, that they're just like dumb, or they're not. That's why these people are incredibly smart engineer type people. That's the industry they're in. Yeah. So I think there was a profound respect very early on for me of a business is really successful with the people that are hands-on doing the work and with the client. It's not really the leadership team. Like they're great leaders, but if you can get that, whatever it is, down to those people, regardless who they are or what they do, like that was the impact. So then I went to IU, played football, and the first kind of entrepreneurial spirit I did was I was in a fraternity, and at the time my girlfriend was in a sorority, And I went over to her sorority one time and these girls were going nuts. And I'm saying like 50, 60 girls going nuts over these fake purses, right? And uh,
Nice.
Indiana is nowhere close to New York, but I knew that that these fake purses were in New York in Chinatown or, wherever it was. So I got my butt on a plane,
Sure.
went to New York, and I bought $10,000 worth of fake purses. And I was
Oh
broke
my
as a joke. It
gosh.
was the first loan I ever took. Went to JP Morgan, and I remember the interest rate was at the time was like 18%, and I flew through them. Flew through them.
So let me ask you this. I got to pause you. How did you get those purses back? Did you just get like 2 or 3 suitcases and right on the plane it
Dude,
went?
like one trying to get the purses alone, like I'm I'm a white guy and I look like a cop, right? Like I just do. Like everybody thought I was a
You do. Yeah, you
right?
do.
And at the end of the day, like you go in and they don't tell you that they're fake and they take you in this back room. Well, once I finally
Right.
got to that and somebody that spoke enough English to understand what I wanted to do, I got these bags that were like 5 feet tall and they were like round and they looked like there were
Yeah.
bodies in them. So I had two of those that I took back. And then I got in this swing that I would COD back in the day, cash on delivery. So they'd send them to me and I
Yep.
would pay for it all when it showed up at my fraternity. So I did that through college,
Oh my
made
gosh.
a handsome amount of money, and
Hmm.
it was just that entrepreneurial spirit. Money has always been a driver for me, but it's not the
Hmm.
cash. It's not to buy things. It's just my trophy, right? Like, hey, if I can make an extra
Yeah.
thousand
Yeah.
dollars or whatever it is, it was just kind of always where it was. And then as soon as I left school, uh, left IU, I started a development company. I got seed money from my dad. We bought it. I bought a piece of
Hmm.
ground and developed it, put a Walgreens on it. And then I started a construction company to do all the
Wow.
site work. So that was kind of my early stage entrepreneurial spirits.
I love that. So let's dive into that. I want to talk about like how young were you when you got out of college? So you're 21, 22 and you're like, "Hey, I want to develop this real estate." Is that kind of the time
Yeah.
frame?
So I was 22 and I had some experience in construction and I knew
Yep.
construction was something that I liked, but I always had this feeling like when you drive by a building, um, every that building's not going anywhere. And if you have a part of
Right.
building something in a community, like you can drive by and be proud of it
Hmm.
over and over and over again. And that's what kind of got
Yep.
me into that developmental spirit is that I understood the construction side, but I didn't understand the real estate side. And I didn't understand how to negotiate
Got it.
contracts with a Walgreens and a PetSmart and all those. So that's kind of when I dove
Hmm.
into it. But just like anything, for all those franchisees out there, it's pretty simple. What's your demographic? What's your traffic count? And what's your income? Right? And you
Yep.
base some really good assumptions off of that. And I got lucky. I got lucky. I bought a great piece of ground, and
Sure.
kind of just kept going from there.
I love that. So that's being obviously being that young, you're like getting hit with the fire
Oh,
hose of all this stuff from probably these older people who are like, who's this young guy? He doesn't know what he's doing. We're gonna take advantage of him, get a banging deal. Who did you lean to, or who did you have as a mentor when you were that young? Or did you kind of just fumble and learn as you go? I know I had a mentor when I was kind of like up and coming in the finance industry. A lot of people mentor through books and podcasts and stuff like that. But was there like one or two people in particular that you're like, this is the person I learned a ton
James,
from?
I've been on a ton of these, and nobody's asked me, and I've never got to this point, so I appreciate it. Is
Hmm. Yeah.
early on, I was desperate because I didn't know anything, right? And I think the
Hmm.
difference at that point was I was willing to ask anybody a question because I didn't want to fail. But what I didn't realize
Right.
until you asked me that question is as I progressed through my career and I became a better operator, better business owner, I stopped asking those freaking questions. So
Hmm.
there was a person initially there was a developer and I talked to him and they introduced me to a attorney that had negotiated Walgreens deals. So now I've got this source of information and structure that all I got to do is make the numbers work. So that person was unbelievably influential to be able to do that. And then it's kind of, you see it and understand it, and you just get better and better and better.
Yeah, I love that. And I think truly, I mean, we could talk about this stuff for hours, but I really think mentorship is a really good way to not fail or to fail
Yep.
less, right? I think there's an inevitably going to be some failures that you need to learn from. But having a mentor that can kind of like keep you down those bowling alley
Yep.
guardrails of business is important.
I would
Yeah,
say one thing
that's
with
huge.
this is that, there's quite a few people that call me and want that mentorship, right? But they don't really want the mentorship. They just want the silver bullet.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
So, and for all the entrepreneurs and all the, the people out there that own a franchise, and you own 2 and you want to own 30, you have to invest in the relationship with somebody that's done 30 or 50. And it's your duty, the one that needs the information, to give them something and be consistent. Because if you just ask one question, one phone call, and then you come back in 6 months and ask another question, you just want something from them, and that person is not going to personally invest themselves in you.
Yeah. I love that. And actually it's funny you say that, because the guy that mentored me, I would say, if I can, one thing that I'm really good at is just being coachable. And like, I was just dumb as a rock. And this guy, he said, listen, if you just do what I tell you to do, you will become successful and you'll make money at this. And I had no clue what I was doing. And I truly did. I just learned, I listened, and I went back to him. He said, hey, go try it this way. I went and did it, failed, went back, said, hey, this is what happened. What do I do next? Went back, and just again and again and again. But I totally agree with you. If you're out there and you're looking for mentorship and you're looking for that just silver bullet, most guys, I think, that have been there and have done what you're trying to accomplish, they're going to see right through that, and they're like, nah, dude, you're not willing to do what it takes to get in your store, roll up your sleeves, and get dirty. So that's a great call. Yeah, you got to be
something you said, and I want to give you a lot of credit. Like, you've been a very successful franchise owner, right? And I bet it's that coachable side that's made you so successful, because they've laid out, just do this and don't reinvent the wheel, right? And I think the arrogance I've had in my past is, oh yeah, well, it's worked for them, but I'm going to tweak it just this little bit because I'm going to make it better. And like, just do what they say, right? Like, just do what they say, because it's proven. And that's what makes a great franchise, right? They have this proven process. And I think that's the biggest thing for companies is you got to have a proven process. Doesn't matter if it's, one location or 100 locations, because you're never going to get the consistency and repeatability if you don't have some type of process. And if you're a franchise, just follow the process that they got.
Don't change it until it's perfected. Make some suggestions, right? But yeah, I totally agree. Just follow the system, follow the process. But yeah, you know how it is, Matt. We're all type A's. We think we can do it better. So as you're developing a Walgreens, you're getting that under lease. What are some of the huge obstacles in your first deals that you'd say, like, this was one of the biggest mistakes, one of my biggest failures, one of your biggest challenges? What were some of those that you remember that you're like, this literally, saved me millions down the road because I made this mistake early on?
Oh man. Well, it was really tough going into Walgreens corporate. I had to buy a suit. You walk in there and you feel out of place, a fish out of water. That was difficult, but ultimately, I think being young and being overly confident, and I think even sports, like, I'm gonna win, having that mentality got me through that. But I would say the issue that I ran into is now a Walgreens is like $4 to $6 million to build. And this is on my shoulders. So what I found really fast was that pressure of money and this thing. Like I at this time I just bought my first house for $100,000, right? I didn't have any much income at all, and I've got this massive number. And what I did was I tightened up. I tightened up really tight. And then what did I do? I would get frustrated with people. I wouldn't be patient. I had unrealistic expectations, and it's the pressure that does that to us. And I realized really fast in me, my body, and how I acted was, hey, when I'm under pressure, like I gotta really dial it back because I was not getting the productivity and the outcomes that I wanted because the way I was showing up. Sure. So I think long term, did it save me millions of dollars? I don't know about that, but it made me a better leader. And then I would always revert back, right? I'd always revert back to that type A aggressive, let's get it done. There is no excuses. Yeah. But you realize that pattern doesn't work, that the stick doesn't work if you don't put a carrot out there every once in a while,
Yeah, that's a great point. A lot of times, even in the franchise world, we're so quick to judge the franchisor because they didn't do this or they didn't provide X, Y, and Z for us. When in reality, let's just take a deep breath and go to them and say, hey, here's a potential problem. How can we help fix it together? Yep. But I'm with you, man. Yeah, like that I could see that. You could get frustrated. Construction guys aren't working as fast as you want them to get the project completed. And it's like, just give me a hammer. I can do this better. Yep. But obviously that you've seen that obviously as the years have gone on, that's allowed you to be more patient with people, you think, and allowed you to close more deals and have more things happen?
Yeah. I mean, patience comes with age. I think my patience hasn't gotten that much better. It's my empathy that's gotten better, not sympathy. Like my empathy that, things didn't go right and why didn't they? And I kind of backtrack and understand why did they not? So, and let's correct them, right? Rather than just harping on something that you're just harping to make. I was just doing that to make myself feel better. Oh, I've been hurt. I yelled. But it doesn't do any good. Like, what are the actionable steps that we're going to take forward? And that's what I teach my clients is like, I get it. Like we're going to stumble, but what are we going to do to get out of it? And what's the clear vision for our people so they can all be on the same page? So this issue doesn't happen again.
Yeah. Love that. So you had mentioned a little bit ago about, money kind of being a trophy. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about like the deeper trophy, right? The deeper why, because I think when it comes to business, a lot of people from the outside say, well, you're just doing it for the money, or I just want to get this car. I just want to buy this new house, or I just want cash. Right. But I think when we look at it and we dig a little deeper, it's a lot more than those monetary and those material things for most people when they're going to make when they're going to do something exceptional. Yep. It's much more than that. It goes deeper. So what is that for you, Matt? Like what drives you to get out of bed, spring up in the morning, crush the gym, and then go hammer it out with clients? Because money's the trophy, yep. Right? But what is it that really drives Matt?
Impact. You talked about mentors. And the feeling when you help somebody get through a hard time, doesn't matter if it's a friend that's going through a divorce or a death in the family or a business, it feels the same way. Like you're struggling. It feels like a death. And if you can be there to be on that person's side and to be a sounding board, to kick them in the butt too, right? Like a lot of us owners, they don't have any, we're in our own little silo. Like we're the entrepreneur owners and nobody understands us and we're standing by ourselves. And when you can be the motivator and you really get after that person to get better, like that's what I do it for. Right. And I tell all of my clients, like, I'm not afraid to get fired. Like I'm gonna say, I'm gonna point out, and I'm gonna push you. And that's what entrepreneurs want. They thrive it because nobody really does it because they're doing it to everybody else.
Mhm.
So I think I'll kind
Sure.
of go back to it's the impact. Like you're having an impact on a business that's 10 people or 1,000 people because
Mhm.
you impact that leader and that leadership team, and they learn how to impact their people. It's going to be pushed down to the entire organization. So I think it's really impact, and the more positive impact, and that's financial for companies. It's opening and
Mhm.
understanding how to solve issues or even dealing with health issues, meaning do we have a real healthy team that trusts each other and has good conflict and truly gets to a point where they're accountable to each other because they agree on what the finish line looks like when you step back and you see a team that was not doing very well and then they are and then it's life is easier and they're having success, like the impact is what it is for me. um
I love
yeah.
that.
And I
Yeah,
do want to say
that's
this,
huge.
because this is a lot of entrepreneurs and people that are buying franchises, and you're buying it to have success, right? Be free, you want to own it and you want to grow it. Dan Sullivan, if you haven't read the book, Dan Sullivan has a book, it's called Gap and Gain. And this book had
Mhm.
a profound impact on me. And this is why you kind of talked about that income level. So, my first ever job that I paid myself was like $25,000. And at that point,
Mhm.
like I was really happy with that, but I wanted to make 50,000, right? And when I made 50, I wanted to make 100. And for us as
Yeah.
business owners, we have goals every year. I hope that we have goals. And when we hit
Yeah.
those goals, it's like we don't really celebrate that we got to it. It's like we want
Sure.
something better. So the gap in the gain is really about, if you live in, if me and you are going on this journey and we're like, hey, we're going to get to the horizon. Well, we never do, because the future is forever fleeting, right? And that
Right.
money, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter if you make $1 million or $100 million, like that's not what does it for you. And that's a gap
Mhm.
mentality. Like I always want more. I want that nicer car. I want that bigger house. I want more salary. I want more locations, whatever it is. But if you really look at the game, you turn around and you look at James 10 years ago, that's where you really
Mhm.
get freaking happy. Is you're like, look how far I've come.
Right.
And it has nothing to do with the
Yeah.
dollars and cents. But I can tell you that kid at 25, who I am today, it like you look back and you're like, that's game mentality. And you realize you are working and you are putting in the work. And it's not all about just hitting those goals and making that money.
I love that. And that's the truth. And that's what it is about goals too, right? Is when you set those goals, you got to set
Yep.
more. And then hopefully you accomplish them, and you got to set more, and you got to have a plan and implement, take action and execute. And yeah, I love that. And it is fun. I actually, one thing I started doing when I was getting mentored by this guy is I started keeping just calendar books, and I would write down my goals in them and review them every day and then every year. And it's cool to see back
Oh,
to 2018, some of the small stuff. I'm like, oh, this would be great to hit this thing. I'm like, wow, that was really small of a goal. But at the time,
yep.
at the time, I'm just getting started. I'm just building these habits and learning that stuff. So absolutely love that. That's
I
huge.
think another part with
Um,
that, sorry to cut you off, is as that
no, you're good.
lonely entrepreneur and owner of any organization, like, because you're at the top, you might have a partner, but it's lonely. And nobody's going to pat you
Mhm.
on the back and say, hey, it's tough times, good job. To look in the past and see how far you've come and the obstacles you've gone around and removed gets our confidence back. And when a owner is
Yeah.
confident, the organization is confident. When the owner is stressed, the organization is stressed.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. 100%. All right, so let's move, let's kind of like fast forward
Cool.
a little bit. So your first deal was like Walgreens. Where did you jump, after your like mid to late 20s and into your 30s? Where were you headed in that
Yeah,
direction?
so I started another construction company and did all the site work, and then ultimately ended up selling that company internal to a few of the two of the employees, and then the development company 2008 came along, and Like it just
Mm,
crushed real estate. So I
yeah.
strategically sold some ground and then kept some, right? There's no cost to it
Hmm.
other than insurance and, your taxes. Not a big deal. So then I thought, okay,
Right.
at this point I had 75 employees and I just said, man, I'm a great operator. I love business. I love solving problems. I just don't like dealing with the people issues. I wasn't good at
Sure.
it. I didn't enjoy it. I was like, I'm going to go work for somebody else. And I worked for a corporation, an international corporation called HydroWorks Therapy Pools. And what they made was underwater treadmills for the sport, baseball, basketball, football, rugby, all over the world for the
Wow.
professional and collegiate, and in like high end hospitals. So these products
Hmm.
were in the millions of dollars. And so I was the head of
Yeesh.
sales. And then ultimately
Okay.
moved from head of sales to the COO and really helped on that operational side because I had the sales background and
Hmm.
knew the sale. I was really facing the customer. And then I moved to the COO operation role of how do we make a better, more effective, more cost effective product. And then the business, we decided we were going to sell it to private equity and kind of help the group get the business ready, and then took over as CEO of that company. So I kind of went right back into this, having a whole bunch of people, that I was managing,
Yeah.
and it just, it was a full circle. But that in my career was pretty amazing. And then we sold to private equity, and I stayed on board, and then ultimately stepped away and started doing what I'm doing now of just being a coach and a facilitator for business owners to kind of help them get what they want out of their business.
And so, and so, what jazzed you up? Like, what got you excited about that? Because you're working by yourself essentially, right? It's Matt and then you're working with business owners, so obviously you don't have the employee side, which is probably
Yep.
nice, right? Um, but what got you excited about that? Was it just because you were really good at turning around businesses and you knew what needed to be implemented and changed? Or how did you get into that kind of like coaching and consulting
Yeah.
piece?
So the I used EOS. So EOS is the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Gino Wickman started it, 20 plus years ago.
Yep.
I actually implemented EOS into my business. And it was a profound change because I was, really what we work on is giving a clear vision to everybody in the organization of where we're going. We work on the health of the leadership team. And so we're open, honest, and candid. And then how do we execute? How do we get traction? How do we actually get the things done? And my problem as a leader was I wasn't giving a clear vision. And I
Hmm.
expected people to be accountable and to do these things. And I could kind of see what 10 years looked like, but they didn't. I wasn't very clear on what they needed to do today, tomorrow, this month, this quarter. And EOS helped, like as a leader, helped me unbelievable. And there was no like silver bullet. It was just a process. And when I
Hmm.
left, I that's why I was so passionate about EOS. Is there's kind of three things. One, I have employees, but ultimately I don't have 75, right? So it's a small
Yeah.
organization. Um, I
Yep.
get to be in business. Like I love talking business. I love talking to business owners. I love solving and helping them solve business problems. And then the last is I could understand and be in different market segments. I could be in a crumble cookie and I could work for an IT company, a marketing company, and
Hmm.
a pharma company. It didn't matter. And I
Sure.
got this massive exposure to all these different industries rather than just being in one. So that's really it. I don't have many employees. I'm still in business. And I had this ability as a coach and facilitator to be able to go across so many different businesses and just, learn a little bit more.
Yeah, your market, you have a really wide
Yep.
market. I mean, it's anybody that owns a business and wants to see their business become more
Yep.
successful. I mean, it's pretty simple. That's incredible, and I think it definitely. Do you think your athletic background and your sports background has driven some of that stuff, your business and what you're currently doing
Yeah,
now?
absolutely. The relentlessness, the ability in your head, You will not give up and you will not lose. And I'll tell you, I played for Indiana University and we lost a lot, right?
Sure.
And every Sunday after our game, we all believed we were going to come out and beat Michigan the next week, right? It wasn't that case of they're like, well, we're going to show up. Like, it's like, we're going to win. And did we win? No. Same thing would happen again. And I think that helped, that mind frame helps an entrepreneur because it is failure after failure after failure after failure. And you just know, like, you just keep pushing on. You believe and you keep doing the work, like it's going to happen.
Yeah, I love that. And that's true. Just the failure after failure. Hopefully we learn from our failure and don't necessarily repeat that. Right. All right, let's talk a little bit about COVID because, as a business owner, everybody was impacted. Some were impacted in a really good way. Crumble, for example, like our sales increased big time because, we all got the stimmy checks and everybody loves sugar. So come spend it at Crumble. But how did COVID impact what you're currently doing? Or, was it negative? Was it positive? What did you have to do to pivot, change strategies? What did that look like for you?
Yeah. So my business thrived, and this is why, because there was, at the time, I was much more of like a consultant. So there was businesses that come in and be a fractional president or CEO or, whatever it might be. And during COVID, like there was a lot of stress, like there was a lot of unknowns, and I could bring a lot to these teams that I worked with to get them through COVID. Because when you're in the foxhole, sometimes it's really hard to think strategically on what we need to do, or you don't see the blind spots. So that COVID was unbelievable for me with all the teams. Like we prepared, we set a plan on things. We didn't even know if they were going to happen or not, but we had a plan. We weren't just like day by day wondering and complaining. Like the one thing I drove is I don't want to hear the word because of COVID. Like we are going to be the difference makers that make something out of COVID, not look at COVID that it shut down, these businesses or affected us. So that was positive,
right.
But it's amazing what I actually got out of COVID was I would come in and help a handful of these businesses and solve the problems. Well, what happened was after COVID, when I removed myself from that deep entrenched feel, the problems came back. It's because I solved them rather than teaching the people that need to do them how to solve it. And it's that whole adage, you can give a man a fish or you can teach him how to fish and he'll eat forever. Like what I realized was I was this consultant that was like, yeah, we won. I was the one that led the troops. And then you leave and the troops fail. And was I really a leader?
Right.
No, I was just a freaking consultant that was getting paid to solve problems, but the problem came back. So that's why another real reason that I am so focused on EOS is in what I do in EOS with companies. And I'm not cheap, right? And people have to invest the money. And what I found is if you help them solve the problems will never come back. If you come in as a consultant and solve the problems, KPMG, like the biggest companies in the world, they come in and solve the problem comes back. They do the same thing over and over and over again, right? So if you can teach a business owner how to solve it and help them solve it, and it's their idea, like the problem will never come back again.
Yeah, that's huge. And I know a lot of people didn't make it through COVID, and I know a lot of people thrived during COVID. So it's a topic that's really interesting to find out where business owners turned, pivoted, made changes. But let's be honest, towards the end of it, it was like, okay, let's just be done with this thing now. Like, can we just move on with our lives?
The other thing, the big thing in COVID, another big driver, and I think a lot of companies that had success outside of being in a market that, you're in the grocery store, something that, PPE, it made us focus on our people. right? Like
Yeah.
you had to focus on your people because one, you want to make sure they were safe. Hey, yeah, we got to make money. And
Mm-hmm.
if we don't have our people and we're not treating them right, like what's going to happen? And I think the culture, what are your values in your company was a huge thing for all my businesses that I worked with. And it just drove it really deep. And those people really knew that they cared and that they were going to have a job and they were going to have that paycheck and we were going to hit these goals and objectives. So I think that was another big highlight that came from COVID.
Yeah. No, I love that. So talking a little bit about not necessarily COVID, but I think COVID was a magnifying glass on a lot of leaders and leadership teams and
Yep.
owners, right? Because you're forced to be that leader. So, Matt, if I'm a brand new franchisee or a brand new business owner and I'm starting up a business and I need to hire a general manager for the location and I need to hire a regional manager because we're going to grow out 3-4 spaces, right? So I want to kind of like stack myself. What am I looking for? What qualities should I, as a business owner, be looking for out of those people to really make sure that I'm getting the most possible success as we start to
Yep.
scale?
I look at this a little bit differently than some. But where I start is I would say, James, you need to understand what your unique ability is as the owner, right? Like in unique
Mm-hmm.
ability is another Dan Sullivan term, but it's the thing that we do unbelievably well and we love doing it, right? Business owners that
Mm-hmm.
start a business and start expanding, they don't love everything that they're doing. So if you're going to expand with that general manager, make sure that their strengths are part of your weakness. And the hardest thing that we
Okay.
got to look at, and I would say a lot of business owners aren't good on the finance side. Like they know how to make and
Mm-hmm.
do their product, but they're not good on the finance side. So okay, you got to find somebody that can do that. Or hey, I'm not a strategic owner. I'm more of an executing operational owner. Okay, well, we need to find somebody that's strategic because we need to have that balance. So I think it's really looking
Mm-hmm.
inside, which is sometimes the hardest to go, okay, what am I really good at? What do I love doing? Oh, I love business development. I love going out and hobnobbing. I don't want to be behind the counter, making stuff. I want to be in front of the client. Okay, great. How do we get you there more? Because if you're in that unique ability for the new person and for the owner, like you're going to have success because you can't wait to get to work to do that thing that you love to do.
Yeah, that's a great call. Start inside and find out what you don't like to do and hire
You
that
have to,
out.
because then you see the
That's a
value.
great
You no
call.
longer have to do it. And man,
Right.
I don't want to spend that money on that person. And you realize I don't have to do it. It's getting done better than it ever has. And then if you made a mistake on a hire, like you gotta understand, like you gotta make a change because if that person's doing
Mm-hmm.
something that's not in their unique ability or that they love to do, like they're just doing the job because they want a paycheck, not because they're passionate about it. And they're not going to make your business better.
Got it. That's great. So let's dive in on that just a smidgen more, Matt. Like as you start to build out the team a little bit, at what point? And I know this happened in our business, and we're fixing it and have fixed it mostly. But at what point do you say, "Hey, we need to have some higher labor cost because we are scaling and we do need to bring in those right people"? How do you determine like when that time is it really like when you start to hate your life and you're doing the things that you know you don't want to do? You're like, all right, I need to really hire this out. When do you know? How do you know? What's a good time? I know there's really ambiguity
Yep.
questions, but how do you determine that?
I'm a data driven individual. So, hey, I believe this strategy is going to work next year. If I bring on this person at X amount of dollars, we're going to be able to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you drive the strategy and the goals and the accountability to that person you're paying and to the goals. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you get the right person and you hit that goal, like you're going to be more productive, make more money. But what happens, I believe, is owners go, oh, I got way too much going on. I'm just going to hire this person to solve my problem, but they don't really have a strategy on how they're going to pay for them or how they're going to make it productive. And all you're really doing is taking money out of your pocket and putting it into theirs, and your business stays the same. So I don't know if that answers the question, but the leader has to have a clear vision, a clear strategy of when we hire this person, what do they have to do? How are they going to add value, and make sure you're tracking to make sure that they truly are and you're hitting the objectives that you've set out to hit, revenue or whatever it might be. And the other part is,
so essentially you're saying,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry. No,
go
what
ahead.
were you gonna say?
Well, you're essentially saying, let's use the example of a salesperson. If you're trying to grow your sales business and you want to grow it by 100K, and the salary that you're going to bring on for the salesperson is, let's say, 50K, they've got to be able to hit that metric to make them worth it for that salary. Plus they're going to make 50 on top of that. Is that kind of layman's terms what you're saying?
Yeah, and the more direct we are with that salesperson to say, this is what I'm going to hire you, and this is what I need you to be able to produce. And then it's our job to inspect what we expect, right? And you can't just take your hands off the wheel as an owner. Like, you got to be able to train and teach and keep these people moving in that direction, because it's not going to happen by itself.
Right. That's so good. I've heard that said before, but you're making it sound more clear in the aspect of, no different in your business. Okay, you've got to take this one person that you're planning on hiring, create a game plan for them on where they're going to go in the next 12 months, meet with them regularly on how that process is going. And you'd probably even say, if they're not meeting that expectation or they're below that expectation, they're probably not the right fit, and we need to find somebody new.
So I teach this a lot, and I think this is what I'm really, really good at, is that when I give, I call them scorecard measurables, like weekly things we've got to do. I've got quarterly goals, and I've got 1 year goals. And then we've also got processes in my business. And when those processes are not followed, there's a hiccup or something happens, I stop. We meet on a weekly basis. I have a weekly meeting. Okay, why'd that happen? How do we correct it? And I am never scared to have a very poignant conversation with somebody to tell them they did not do what they said they were going to do. What's great is my team does the same thing to me, right? So we have this culture of we're not scared to kind of point at each other and go, you said you were going to get that done. Where a lot of people feel like, if I do that, man, I'm micromanaging or they're going to leave. The great employees that are in the right seat want that feedback because they want to get good. Now, if it's consistent that they aren't doing what they're saying they're going to do, they might be in the wrong seat. But I find more times out of not, it's the leader isn't clear on what they need to do and giving them right direction and training, rather than the person just not wanting to do it. And those are those hard conversations that ultimately, I think I've had plenty of them in my life. To me, I've had plenty of those in people in my life, and they've excelled because, hey, our expectations are clear. And then if they need help, they just ask for help.
Right. And that's so good. And I failed at that so many times as we've built and tried to scale our business. Is you get so narrow-minded a lot of times where you're like, okay, we're going to open a new store. We have to have a general manager. The time is ticking. Let's get somebody in there. And then you don't set the expectation. You don't set the game plan. And then it's 2 or 3 months down the road and you're like, great, now I got to retrain. I got to reevaluate. And so having that strategy and that plan set out ahead of time when you're about to hire them, or even before you're going to hire them, that's got to be crucial. Because then it's all out on the table and you can have that conversation at the same time.
When everything's on the table and it's clear, the person that's not doing what they said they were going to do knows it, right? There is no guess. Hey, as a salesperson, I need you to sell $50,000 and it's going to take 500 phone calls to be able to get that 50 grand. You have a year to make 500 phone calls. What does that look like? Boom, 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 boom. And when they decide, for the first 2 months that they're not making any phone calls, it's very clear that they're not doing what we set out in the plan.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. Just clarity and getting that stuff written out. So mental note and written note. Got to get that clear.
And the other thing is owners, like, don't, I say this to, don't let the inmates run the asylum, right? The people that
Mhm.
are not doing the right things, don't fit our values. Don't let the inmates run the asylum, right? There has to be order. And ultimately, you're not a jerk. You're not an ass for going to somebody and saying,
Mhm.
hey, we're not getting this done. Have I not been clear? How can I be clear? How can I help you? And ultimately, you're going to see a response from them of, yes, they want to get better, or they're just going to sit there and go, I'm going to wait for you to ask me this 3 more times. And you know that's not the right person.
Right. Right. Exactly. Well, Matt, let's move on here. A couple last questions as we kind of wrap up on the hour. So this one may be relatively quick, but want to maybe get into two kind of more maybe in-depth questions a little bit. But where do you see yourself and your business in like the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah. So I'm at this point, I'm based in central Pennsylvania. So
Mm-hmm.
I deal with clients all over the country, but really in that region. In the next 10 years, my wife and I are going to pick a spot, if it's Charleston or Scottsdale or another place that we're going
Yeah.
to move because our kids are in first grade. We basically got 11 years, and I will start a hub in whatever that area is, doing exactly what I'm doing now. And what it will do is it will give me this freedom. I'm 43. That time I'm going to be 50, 55. It gives me the freedom to be able to still be involved in business and that type of thing. But then cut, really pull back on, instead of having 25 clients, I only have 10. And maybe at that point
Yeah.
in time, I have some ownership in 3 to 5 companies that I'm helping kind of manage as well. So that's kind of my goal and objective, is to always be in that business world and helping leaders. It doesn't matter if I'm an investor or doing what I'm doing.
I love it. That's awesome, man. So talking a little bit about, you just mentioned the family a little bit, and I think a lot of business owners have challenges with this. I did early on and still do, right? Because we're just wired to never turn
Yep.
off. I feel like you're probably the same way. So how do you find some balance? And I really hate that word. I really hate balance. But how do you turn off? Are you a scheduler? Are you like analytical where you just throw your phone in the woods for like 6 hours to be with the family? Or how do you find the balance with that family, your beautiful kids, your wife, making sure that they get dad's best time as well?
Yeah. I'm not great at it, right? I have to be intentional, and it's really, for me, on a
Mm-hmm.
calendar. Like, I can look at my calendar a year out. I'm really lucky. I know exactly, and I block weekends. I block weeks for vacation. I block time
Mm-hmm.
or my wife's anniversary. Me and my wife's anniversary. Like that. That's how I kind of control myself, because if not, I'll just work, 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 because I love it, right? I love what I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'll tell you, the impact that it had for me was when I was the CEO of HydroWorks, and I was around my family, but I was not present. And and Janelle used to always say, like, I'm a CEO's wife, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. Yeah, you're a CEO's wife. Well, when I left and started doing something else, she finally came and said, she's like, for the last X amount of years, like you really haven't even been a part of this family. And I go, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
have. I've been here. I make the time to, I get it, but you weren't. And it's like this, oh my gosh. It's like an alcoholic that
Mm-hmm.
realizes, I really do have a problem. And then you have that ability to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, for business owners with a family, ask your husband or wife, right? Like, how are you really feeling? And ask them to be honest, which they might not initially. But when that honesty, don't take it personal. Just know that's their
Mm-hmm.
viewpoint to it. And you can decide if you want to change or not. And you can work with them on changing. Hey, Matt, you're on your phone. We're at dinner. Can you get off of it? And I don't take it offensive. I'm like, that's what she was supposed to do. She was supposed to tell me that because I can't control myself. So I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah. No, it's good, man. And we all struggle with it. And I've been there many times, and my wife and I have had plenty of those conversations. And I'm like, I'm doing this for you. But in reality, right? Let's be honest, us business owners, we're not necessarily doing it for our families. We want to provide, but we're doing it because we love it. Just the love of the game and the business is a lot of times why we do it. So, I mean, I think that honesty and, like you said, that communication is so important.
Yeah, you hit on something that I think you should yell from the top of the mountains every time is we are not working hard for our families. We are not. Yeah, we are not. Like, we can look at it, and the people that have hundreds of millions and billions of dollars, you look and they've put the business in front of their family, and they've gotten a divorce, and they've done all these things. Yep. And ultimately what you're doing as a business owner, it's, I won, I'm winning, and you're making a choice. So we are not doing the business. Yeah, we want to support our families, but I don't think our families could care less if we had 2 nickels and we were together having fun, right? So I love that.
Have you been talking to my wife? She's like, I'd live in a cardboard box if we could just get your time back more. I'm like, I know, I'm working on it. But I love that. And to be honest with you, and I want to wrap up with this last question. But to be honest with you, this past year and to end of last year, I've been working on putting my family in my calendar. And it sounds like, James, you're so heartless. They're just a part of your calendar. But the truth is if I don't block that time or put something in the calendar in that area, it will get filled up with something else. And, you know, over the last couple of years, the family did get the last of my time, and I'd rather give them the first of my time and more of it. So it's a work in progress, and maybe they should have an AA meeting or something for us married business people.
I'll say this with the calendar thing. Yeah, it might feel a little heartless, but what it is, it's a repetitive action. And what we do is we get used to that repetitive action. It becomes normal, right? And another thing that I would urge every single business owner to do is when you go on vacation, you turn this thing off for the entire week, or 2 days or however long you're there. And it is going to be painful. I've only done it twice, the last 2 vacations. It is inspiring that you can come back and realize everything didn't fall apart. And ultimately, when you don't answer the phone during that time, you're going to find more issues in your business that you need to solve that you wouldn't have noticed if you would have kept picking up the phone and answering it. So
sure. That's a great call. I love that. Well, I'm supposed to be leaving on a trip on Monday, so
put it down.
I'll see what I can do.
You can do it. It's stressful. You can do it.
You're challenging me right now. Oh my gosh. All right. I don't think my wife's listening, so we're good. But hey, last question, and this is probably a quick question, and maybe not. You don't have to answer it if you don't want to. But I heard a guy. I heard a speech one time, and he said, "What do you want written on your gravestone? What do you want people to see if they were to come by and look at your gravestone when you're gone?" And that really impacted me, really hit me, because we're going to die. We're all eventually not going to be here. We're all eventually going to be in the ground. And what happens to you after, whether you're a believer or not a believer, what you believe, it doesn't matter. But, so I would ask you that question. I don't know if you've ever thought about that, but what do you want people to remember Matt for? What is Matt Foss? If people say your name, what do you want them to remember?
When you first asked the question, I thought, like, my motto is no such word as can't, right? Like I was aggressive for the pursuit of everything I did, but that's ego talking, right? That's ego talking. If I would look at it and I'm sitting up there in heaven, standing next to God, and everybody were like, Matt loved me. Like he really loved me. Like he cared about me. And when he was around, I knew that he cared. I think that would mean more than anything, because when you're around people that care, it just, the weight of the world goes away, or you can, so that's what it would be. Great question.
I love that. It's huge, man. We got to leave a legacy, especially for the kids. It is going to be who knows what the world's going to look like in 10, 20 years.
Yep.
So, well, Matt, thank you so much for being here. We are going to have ways to contact Matt. Check out his social media in the show notes. We're going to get some info on that. So check him out. Check out his LinkedIn, his website. Reach out to him if you need some help. I know people that have worked with Matt and has been game changer for them. So appreciate you, man. Thanks for being on the show.
Appreciate it.